your buddies get home, they see you OD'd on the floor.
So they call 911.
Yeah.
They come. I don't know all that happened. Obviously, it was just what I was told. But chest compressions and then Narcan.
So you stop breathing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like fully like dead.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you know like how long you had been out for before they found you?
No, I didn't read anything about it. To be honest, like when I woke up in the I woke up like in that stretcher thing
Yeah.
they put you on, you know, and I like remember my fucking chest hurt like crazy, and it was like this fucking insane like
surreal feeling.
yeah, like somebody had just like stepped on my chest for the past 30 minutes, you know,
Because they were probably like doing chest compressions
so,
and
like,
shit.
I remember that. And then I remember the guy asking me like, do you know what happened? And you know, like I was like, no. And then I remember thinking like, where's my shit? I was like, dude, where are those balloons at?
Yeah. So you go to this, government-run facility that's helping with drugs. What was the next step to kind of continue your soberness?
I ran for a while longer. Like that didn't stop.
The first stint didn't do it.
I think I moved at that point back into that same environment, doing the same shit. So like nothing had changed, and I hadn't changed or was willing to make these changes, you know?
And like you said, the first time when you were going to the hospital, it wasn't like I need to make changes.
Yeah.
It was like, where are my balloons at?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was there. You know, I finished school. I had like 2 classes left. I promised school I'd finish them and never did them. I did them in 2015 actually, and I finished then. You know, but I went back to LA, and then it was just worse. You know, it was where in LA it was. I got introduced into crystal meth, and it was like that mixed with heroin was like on a whole.
It was like
thing.
the Adderall taken to an extreme.
Yeah, it is. You know, because
Adderall's not far off.
No,
Not at all.
Nope, very close. So and then from there it was like I ran for another like 6 months maybe, and then this is when a worse Vegas trip. I was staying in a hotel, and I guess security caught me like stealing a spoon to go cook in the bathroom.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah, and then so I was in there for like 20, 30 minutes, and then when I came outside, they had like security waiting for me, asking me like, what the fuck were you doing in there, you know?
Yeah.
And like at that point, I was like, dude, you know, like, I'm not fighting yet, you know?
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
fighting you. So they take me into Clark County.
A spoon is a weird thing to take into a bathroom, in their defense.
Well, there's also like
obvious,
one
dude.
explanation.
You eat a yogurt in the bathroom? No, man. Like, for 30 minutes?
Yeah.
No, I'm sitting
You
there
can't,
with
really, you can't really come up with an excuse for a spoon, you know?
Yogurt in the bathroom.
You got me. Fuck, you know?
I like how Kev goes, I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah.
Probably high as fuck. He's like, you win.
So then I spent a couple of days there, and then like it was after that, I went home and like.
And wait, where were you? You're at a
LA.
casino, you said?
Yeah, I was
With some friends?
No, I was like alone. Yeah, this wasn't like a good time in my life. This was like I'm trying to run. You know? Like I was living like some days at my parents' spot, some days in like a motel in Pomona, because they had like a dude there that gave out the best glass, dude. So it was great. And then I just drove further, and I just like there were days where I would just like aimlessly drive.
So during like the peak of your addiction, what's like the scariest or like worst situation you found yourself in?
In the Pomona motel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like do not ever knock on a window when somebody is actively high on meth. You know, like especially if they're tripping out, because like they're freak, you know. So I knocked on the window, and it was like 2 big dudes who were high as fuck, yadded to the fucking forehead, came out with a knife and like put me on the wall and had the knife in my throat, and I was like, yo, I'm just here to pick up glass, man, like what?
What's
I'm not
going
here to harm
on?
anybody, you know. But I remember that was like, damn, dude, like that shit was
What
like,
am I doing
in my
here?
throat, you know. I was like, I shouldn't be here. Like, these guys are fucking psycho, you know.
That's a doozy.
Yeah, because it was like when you're doing that shit, you hang out with
Sketchy people.
not the
Best people,
people, you know. And it was probably like, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months after that, like I had a mini intervention basically, and then I was like, by that point I was like, I think I'm done, and then I flew to here, you know, and then I went to treatment down here for like, I was in treatment technically for like 14 months, but I was high for like 9 of it, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, because like I got away with like, there's stuff called like kratom on the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like
Super familiar.
Yeah, I was able to like, you know, get away with getting high and shit, and then like
Crabums?
Kratom. So dive into that for a little bit, because that's huge down here, and I don't know about like the rest of the country, but I can only imagine.
To be honest, like now the way I think about it is a little different than how I thought about it then. You know,
yeah,
like
for sure.
What is it? Weed mixed with something?
No, it's a root, right?
Yeah,
ultimately,
it's a leaf.
That they make a tea out of. Oh, right. So kava's the root, kratom's a leaf.
Kava's the root.
Right.
Oh, so
have you heard of a kava bar?
Yeah, I know you're talking
so
about.
at pretty much every kava bar you would go to, they also serve something called kratom, which is a very similar thing, but it's different at the same time. Kava is made from a root. They boil this root, it makes a tea out of it. And that's more like a THC effect.
Yeah, it produces the effect of like benzo. You kind of, it's more like alcohol.
Yeah.
And then
kratom.
Is
you
like,
would compare more to. I would compare more to like an Adderall effect, where I start talking my ass off, and
technically it's an opiate. I mean, kind of, it's an opiate.
So you find correct me if I'm wrong, but like at a lot of kava bars and kratom places, you find a lot of people that are recovering addicts from opiates for that reason, because technically, like the origin of that plant is an opiate.
But think about this, like, you know, I used to like look down on that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, bro, at the end of the day, like, if you've seen folks in their pits and you see them doing that, you're like, I'd much rather see you do that, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like the concept of like, it does matter. The lesser evils in this case matter, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I also think like maybe it would be better if those things were introduced that way as like a way to lean off of hard drugs, you know, where when you probably felt guilty about it because it was something you had to hide that probably wasn't approved by everyone in your facility.
No.
And naturally that feels bad because it feels like what you were doing before. You had to go sneakily get this shit and no one can know that you're doing it.
Like at my facility, we don't like advocate for it. We do, but we don't, you know?
It's not like you're providing it.
Yeah, we don't like go out and say, here's kratom for you, you know?
But you're not kicked out or tested for it.
Yeah, we're not gonna like say, hey man, you're a piece of shit. You need to be kicked out of a program for that. Like,
so I mean, would you say that maybe it's a good way to kind of segue out of drug use?
I would just loop it in with like the concept of like some type of medication assisted type treatment. So you know, there are people who take so opiate addicts, you take an opiate, take myself, you know. There's a period where I was on a medication called Suboxone for like 6 months. Okay. You know, and it's a substitute. You know, Suboxone is buprenorphine and naloxone. So bup is I think I don't know. It sticks to it kicks off the original opiates that were hanging on that receptor or something like that, and then bup will take its place, and then naloxone is essentially there to like. I think like prevent you from getting high on other types of substances. So it blocks other opiates from coming in. Okay. And the only opiate you're kind of getting high on is that buprenorphine. Okay. You know, and I think it's a partial. I don't know. I'm not a I'm not in pharmacology. Okay. Yeah. But you know, on that kind of medication, and I, you know, the initial concept of it, I did not like, because I was like, oh, it's a crutch. You don't use it. You know, it's ultimately you're just getting high, and then, you know, you kind of look at the reality of like treatment. You look at the reality of people's quote unquote successes and the measures of what that success is supposed to look like, and you realize like once again that system was actually like dictated by somebody else. That should be dictated by you. You know, sure. You, the person dealing with this shit, whatever it is for you, is what matters. You know, and so. For me to sit there and judge your journey like that is like I'm kind of defeating the entire purpose of practicing what I'm trying to practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
does that Suboxone help with the withdrawal process?
Yeah, absolutely. So like people generally, what happens in Suboxone induction is like somebody will stay off of their opiate of choice for like 24 hours or so, and then they'll take that. You know,
help
like
with the sickness,
and then like definitely you don't get sick, and it prohibits you for another, I think the half-life of naloxone is like 36 hours or something like that. Wow. So it stays in there and it continues to work, you know. So if you were to try to get high after that, you really wouldn't get high.
Wouldn't get the same high.
No.
And is there any withdrawal then once you start using that medication?
Yes. So the initially the idea was like methadone.
Yeah.
Methadone right now, it gets in your like bone marrow. It's incredibly difficult to get off of, and the withdrawals are worse, in my opinion, than opiates.
Okay.
And
that's how people used to lean people off of opiates.
Yeah, you look at all the Vietnam vets that came back. That's what it was for. All those guys coming back addicted to opiates and opium.
Yeah.
They made that as a substitute medication, and I think essentially it created the same type of problem, because ultimately methadone, folks who use methadone kind of...
You're just putting a Band-Aid on the issue.
You can still kind of like use around it too. Yeah. It's not as, I would say, like secure in the measures of like, if you take this medications, it literally has a component where it blocks the other...
From getting high.
Yeah, so it's like...
You could use methadone and then use heroin and get high.
So that you can get high.
Right. Where the Suboxone, am I saying it the right way?
Yeah, Suboxone.
That blocks you from getting high when you're taking it?
So it makes you kind of high, you know, it makes you high, and then...
but it blocks the receptors.
But it blocks, from like being able to take on any other types of opiates, basically, during that time.
So you were in recovery for 14 months. The first 9 months you were still basically playing with it, and in the last 4 months it sounds like you were clean off of everything.
No, it was the opposite. So the first 4 months I was clean, and then I went to a kava bar, and then started that whole run for another year. So that's when I was like, this is detrimental, you know. But at the same time, like, who am I to say? My journey was.
For you, it was.
Yeah. And then probably after I moved out of the halfway house, I like went and lived on my own spot and ran for like 5 months hard, like just actual
so you relapsed,
drugs. Yeah, like actual relapse. So I was like copping caps on 8th, on Atlantic, and like Seacrest and Boynton. So it was just like I was really
What does that mean? Break that down.
Capsules, like and here
of what?
Of heroin. Okay. So like here in Florida they use capsules.
I thought you were talking about restaurants. Wait, what was
sorry.
He's like off of Del Rey, and I'm like,
dude.
I've never heard that.
He's buying drugs.
There's a part of that neighborhood that it's incredible. Actually, the work that I'm doing now, you see like folks are getting pushed out, but because Del Rey is being developed. But a couple years ago, I was on 8th Street, just kicking it.
Buying capsules of heroin?
Yeah, buying capsules of heroin, and then like there's a fucking Dollar General down that street.
They sell it?
No. I would go to the parking lot, and like, bro, I had no tints.
Yeah.
But I was so fucking miserable, but at the same time, like, I couldn't stop, Yeah. So I'd sit in that parking lot, like, on the verge of tears almost every day, shooting up. Wow. And it was just like that route was my route. And like that Dollar General I still drive by like every day.
Really?
Yeah. And like I'm trying to do work where essentially you make kind of treatment and specific like areas of Del Rey are severely underserved with like health stuff. Mm-hmm. And so like that's kind of the venture that we're going into is like aiding those areas, and it was like kind of nostalgic because it was like, dude, this is where it's at. Yeah.
And it hits home too.
Yeah.
So you relapsed for, you said, about 6 months, and then what was the last process of getting clean?
At that point, I was living in Boynton. I was like on the 5th floor, and I was living with a dude named Don. He was like a really solid dude. Mm-hmm. He was sober for like 2 years. He was working for a facility. And I was like miserable. And I was getting high the entire time and hiding it from him. But I fucking knew, Like,
job or no job?
No job.
What are you doing? Just getting
selling
high and that's
shit
it?
And like getting an allowance. Okay. Or like trying to like con my dad into paying for something that wasn't really there. You know? Just being like a fucking piece of shit. Like I've done some shit that like has kept me up at night for months. In the sense of like stealing time, energy, resources from the people that love you the most.
Yeah.
And like, bro, that...
Because that's the easiest to take advantage of because they love you.
Yeah.
You have that crutch.
And like that kind of fucking pushes, you know,
everything.
rough.
And even once you get clean, you can't change what happened before.
Yeah. But I remember that night, I had bought $200 worth of heroin. I had like sold my iPhone or something, you know.
And how long is that gonna last you? $200 worth?
A night? Not
Wow.
yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, like
it's an expensive habit.
Fuck yeah, man. Yeah, that's why like.
Especially for someone with no job. That's $200 a day.
Yeah.
Is hard for someone with a job.
Yeah.
I was like a GM of a nightclub making $200 a day.
But remember, like, I was manipulating everybody around me, telling them I was fine, giving them money, you know? So it was like that whole...
game.
Balancing
that
act.
game, you know? And, like, you know, but that night, I remember, like, all right, I'm going to do all of this, and, like, I'm done so. Like, I didn't have a trigger, so I'm going to fucking jump off this roof. Like, I'm going to get fucked up. And I was like, dude, I can't fucking live in this world anymore, you know. I still remember that. It's like incredibly vivid. But like I was sitting on that roof, like standing on it, like peeking over the edge, and Don comes home. He was supposed to be out that night. And Don coming home, I don't know what fucking happened, but it scared the shit out of me. And so I jumped off onto the balcony again, and he looked at me and was like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? You know, and like I was like, I don't know what I was wearing. I probably looked awful. At that point, I think I was surviving off of like a little bit of water and like half like a ramen pack. Because I was like, everything went to drugs.
Heroin,
And so like my hair stopped growing, my nails stopped growing. Like it was fucking nasty type shit, you know? And literally, I think Don got in contact with some of the other folks at work he was working with and was like, bro, Kev's not listening to me. I don't know if he did this, but he talked to somebody because I got a call like a couple days, like a day after that. And it was a good buddy of mine, Leon. And Leon was working for that facility at that time too. And he was like, bro, like come back, you know, like, dude, like, and I remember he saw me like happy during that 4 months I was like clean. Yeah. And he was like, come back, but that didn't sound like, yo, come get your ass like in this bed in this inpatient facility. It was like,
I don't want to see you gone.
Like come back
or
here.
you're dying.
Like come back to reality, you know. And like from there, that was, well, technically May 1st is the sobriety day that I carry. So that was the 30th. So it was the day before that, and then the next day, you know, I was in treatment, stayed there. Worked there, was like...
It was your life.
Yeah, like, it, you know, and then I was like, I could go back to LA and, like, learn my dad's business, you know, and it's like a fairly easy route, you know, but I had the dumbass idea of, like, starting my own facility during probably the worst time in Florida to start a facility.
Really?
Yeah, because during that time, that industry was getting smashed. So... not just legally, but the insurance companies were starting to wise up to everything, you know? And so they pulled back products, they stopped paying, the reimbursement rates dropped significantly. And so, once again, from, like, unsure situations, fearful situations, painful situations, you know, that ultimately led me to the current model of business that we're running, you know? And so... those things ultimately led me to the decision of, you know, essentially, I don't know if you guys are interested in talking about this shit,
no,
but we're like, you know, we're opening up in primary care offices. So it's essentially the goal was, if I'm 12, can I have access to a psychiatrist and a therapist that's kind of not just my father and my mother or you know, whoever's taking care of me. To the other end of, if I'm 80 years old, you know, can I have access to a psychiatrist and a therapist in an affordable and accessible manner, you know? And so the current models are not conducive for that stuff, you know? And so expanding into, now we're in like 24 locations with primary care, and we're like a specialty of theirs. Even the way we get paid, we're trying to change. And so I saw like major issues with how healthcare is done in specific aspects called fee-for-service, and it's like you do this thing and you get paid for that service, you know?
Okay.
And we're trying to shift it to what's called a value-based model, which is like you get X amount of people to watch over their behavioral health, essentially. And it's our jobs to like keep them out of hospitals, keep them engaged with their communities, keep them engaged with their mental health and their hygiene and all that kind of stuff. So
being proactive, not reactive.
yeah, and for insurance companies, it's a fantastic deal because they save money every time a patient doesn't go to the hospital.
Correct.
And so for me, it's
catching the issue before.
Yeah, like if I can work a deal out with the insurance companies and also essentially not follow this model where like the number of sessions dictates the amount of revenue that comes in. Yeah, and ultimately it'll lead you to the conclusion that you need to be paid in a different way. And it's like per member per month thing, and it's this whole...
And so at the end of the day, what is the business that you're operating?
So we opened up the Harm Reduction Center back in 2017.
Okay.
And that was like my father, me, my partner, his father, and another family. The other family was in a business line that's called an MSO. It's a management service organization in healthcare. And then we were going to do the behavioral health arm and, kind of merge the two products together.
Okay.
And that's what we've done. So it's a behavioral health in the aspect of treatment for addiction and for like other co-occurring mental health issues or just mental health issues specific,
And so is this different from a rehab?
It's kind of
the
proactive.
concept is similar. So like but technically I think we're called a community behavioral health center, or CBHC.
Okay.
But the goal is not to singularize our locations. It's to be across an area, a geographical area, to provide coverage. So that if any of their subscribers around this area have a problem, there is no other phone number they need to call but that number, their primary care's office. And that's simple. Like, you go to your primary care if you feel sick. You go to your primary care office if you feel if you're going through bouts of depression, like you can have access to a therapist there now. And the goal was to like, and dude, it's a big flip from the current model, South Florida model, where it's like
pay for service.
Yeah, fee for service, and it's inpatient to outpatient, and then generally they like fly back home or whatever it is. But the goal was like, what about the local population here? How are we hitting that? And then what did the market before we entered show? And it showed that there was a big hole in outpatient care and contracting with the managed care organizations, which is Medicaid and Medicare products. So and so those big gaping holes are just like nobody cares to fill them because
it continues the problem.
I don't know exactly why nobody's done that shit, to be honest. It was like, and I think it's just because the environment wasn't conducive. They were just making too much money on the fee-for-service side.
Or maybe they knew that fixing the problem wouldn't help fill their pocketbooks.
Right.
I think a lot of times these companies know exactly what the fuck they're doing. And you're like, why would they continue to do that? Because these companies are greedy and they want the most money they have.
Like pharma.
I'm not gonna believe this conspiracy 100%, but like I would honestly sometimes believe that like they have a fix to cancer, they have a solution to it, they just won't do it because the hospitals make less money, the centers make less money, the pharma that's pumping the drugs makes less money. So you gotta understand that like this world that you'd hope everyone would do the right thing in, a lot of times is fed by greed, which only has one result.
I remember that, speaking of things like that, like I looked at like my first county budget, or like a non-for-profit, but a county-driven, I guess, organization that dedicates dollars to this kind of stuff. And it was like, there's X amount of dollars that's dedicated in this county for this work. And I'm like, taking a look at the current infrastructure that's in place now. Yeah. I'm like, fuck, dude, like,
it's peanuts.
We can do better.
Yeah.
And that's just all it is. Like, I don't want to ever disrespect or shit on somebody's journey to try to help somebody else out, man. Like, fuck it, dude. Like, however that worked out for you, great. But there were some things that were missed in the industry. And so I'd like to fill those holes, basically, Yeah.
And And I think, go ahead.
Go for it.
And I think mental health is one of those things where it's like so traditional health in the old school way is like, oh, you broke your arm, let's put a cast on it. Oh, you're fat, eat rice and meat, whatever it is. Like in this new wave of health, I think we're starting to realize the symptoms and the responsibilities of mental health and what that means. It's like it's not embarrassing to go see a therapist. It's not embarrassing to find someone to talk to because ultimately you're catching the problem before you end up breaking your arm, before you end up getting into drugs, or before you get suicidal. So realize that going to a therapist or helping your mental health is tenfold more than helping your physical health, in my opinion. And it shouldn't be frowned upon or viewed in a bad way to want to work on that actively.
Research actually shows that taking care of that stuff ultimately has better health outcomes.
Oh, on the back end, 100%.
So even just from a monetary standpoint, if you're just a capitalist and you're just viewing this from that point, it actually makes more sense to have folks focus on this stuff. It'll keep them out of these situations where generally you pick up these health risk habits when you're in these spaces or when you're in these times and they just don't leave.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I forget. It was something that he ended the question with. I was going to tail off of.
Kevin, on a last note, if you were to leave someone who is a drug addict or just recovered drug addict or still continuing their journey, what message would you leave to them?
Don't be so hard on yourself right now. You know, if you're actively using, you're not alone at all. Absolutely. There are folks out there that understand what you're going through. I've been fortunate to have people not give up on me. But what's most important is at the end of the day that you keep fighting for yourself, whatever that may look like is really up to you. But my hope and dream is that folks reach that place before, the other things happen,
I love that.
Yeah.
Guys, in this episode, you saw Kevin's journey through adolescence and being raised in a Korean family to going to school at CU Boulder and really getting into drug abuse and the effects of that residual initial and the waves that it creates long term. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding mental health or drug addiction or being sober, contact us or Kevin. I'm sure he'd love to talk about it. And ultimately realize that your mental health, and like he said, to recovering drug addicts, or if you're still using, you're worth it. Your life is worth it. There is another side to it. You're seeing that firsthand. I think you got an angel on your shoulder because it sounds like at least two times in your life. It's probably
many
dozens.
times, bro.
Some force was there to save you. So I think maybe that force knew that you had a mission and a purpose later on in life, and that you were going to affect so many lives 10 times over. And I think you're doing that, Kevin.
Thank you.
I think your purpose and your mission is there. Fuck the money, it's going to come. Exactly. But the reason and the why is there, and that's really ultimately that matters.
Hell yeah.
Guys, this is Kevin. We will see you guys next week. Thank you for watching Millennial Mentality.
Peace.
Bye.
Cry with me, yeah. Pour juice inside a soda, turn it over, watch it sink. Yeah, sometimes it might be purple, sometimes it might be that pink. Probably roll that purple diesel, that shit Cuban like my links. But I really like that Cali, cause that shit don't make me trip. Rather flip a boat, nigga, I still serve a zip. I remember being broken, I was down bad on my dick. And she used to call me Ollie, now lil' shawty let me hit. Wait, well maybe it's just Bully, got a nigga confident. Remember all them dreams that I had when I was legit. They're like, yeah, I love the streets, but I'm still gon' go legit. Cause you know I need that German with that brand new fucking tip. Fell in love with them foreigns, watching a nigga Euro step. Got me feeling like I'm Harden, cause I'm plugged in with the ref. That like, if you touch me wrong, you might get hit with this tech. Let them birds fly like a nigga Carson West. And I swear they broke my heart when I seen them. But that shit, it made me strong, now I'm right back on my best. Like bitches, leave me alone, why I get linked on this tech. Like little bitches, leave me alone, unless you gonna drop that neck. Like little bitches, leave me alone, unless you talking about a check. Pour juice inside a soda, turn it over, watch it sink. Yeah, sometimes it might be purple, sometimes it might be that pink. Probably roll that purple diesel, that shit Cuban like my links. But I really like that Cali, cause that shit don't make me trip. Pour juice inside a soda, turn it over, I just sing. Yeah, sometimes it might be purple, sometimes it might be that pink. Probably roll that purple diesel, that shit cute like my lips. But I really let that Cali, cause that shit don't make me trip. Yeah.